Pleasant good evening again. Correction. Our host for this evening is ready. Meet Mishka Edwards. Mishka Edwards was born and raised in Cane Hill. She is currently employed at the St. Vincent and Grenadines Community College Division of Technical and Vocational Education as a lecturer in the Department of Hospitality and Agriculture. Know why she's here? That's because Miss Edwards' main focus and her passion is in agriculture, where she, where she has lectured, where she has lectured for quite a few years. She is also an enthusiastic farmer and an ambitious agripreneur who wishes to contribute holistically to the development of agriculture sector of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and now we are here this evening to include St. Lucia and of course St. Kitts and Nevis. Mishka Edwards by no means will soon become a friend to all, as she has that warm personality that encourages persons to just take her right in. With that, I said, Miss Mishka, welcome, and to you ladies, I say, please meet Mishka Edwards.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Everybody can hear me?
Yes, afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Yes,
Yeah.
good afternoon. Hello. Good
All right.
afternoon.
So good afternoon again. And today, I'm going to take you through a small journey of sustainable agriculture, right? So Latoya has already introduced me, so without me taking up time again, I am going to begin my presentation. Feel free to leave your message in the chat. If there's a question that you want to ask, there's a break in between where I will stop and ask questions. So feel free to jot down your questions and I will take a moment to respond. All right. All right. So for today's session,
I deployed one member of my team down there, Maxim, and we spent time.
all right. So just for the session, please mute your mics and raise your hand if you want to ask a question. All right. So for today's session, at the end of this session, you should be able to define sustainable agriculture and its core principles, identify the key challenges facing agriculture development in the Caribbean, describe various sustainable agriculture practices suitable for Caribbean context, evaluate the role of technology in promoting sustainable agriculture, assess the environmental, economic, and social benefits of adopting to sustainable agriculture practices, and discuss the prospects and opportunity for enhancing sustainability in Caribbean agriculture. So at the end of my session, we're going to choose 3 individuals, 1 from each island, right? So 3 individuals for the millie. And the millie is basically the most important lesson learned yesterday. So next class, which will be next week, Tuesday, 3 individuals, volunteer yourself, and you will take a minute or 2 and give us a recap of what was covered today, right? So I know within the last decade or so, you've been hearing the term sustainability, a lot. You're hearing sustainable development and everybody think it's a new term. It's not a new term. It's only a term that has been of main focus within the last decade or 2, because we have to think about the future generation, right? In terms of not only when we are farming, but when we're doing many other things, right? So our session today is on sustainable agriculture. So basically, sustainable agriculture refers to farming methods that basically fulfill the needs of generation, the current generation, But you have to take into consideration of ensuring the future generation also will have access to the resources that they need for food production. Oftentimes when we are farming, we're not thinking about the future generation. We're just thinking we need to farm either for an income or farm to feed our household, right? So oftentimes there's pests. We buy a chemical, we put it into we apply it to the plant. Obviously, it's going to get into the soil. We add fertilizer without even thinking the correct amount of fertilizer needed. And with this, we are destroying the soil without actually knowing this. So when we talk about sustainable agriculture, we have to focus on growing crops in a sustainable manner so that we do not destroy the resources, the natural resources such as the soil, for future production, right? This approach emphasizes the long-term sustainability of both the environment and the farming community. And I'll tell you this, for the past decade or even more, folks has been farming in a vacuum. They don't think about the environment around them and what effect that they're having on the environment. But fast forward today, after years of farming, especially when we were involved in banana production, our main focus was to grow banana, get it to a certain size, certain look, and so that we can ship it to our markets in the UK. But we weren't taking into consideration what effect of adding all this fertilizer and the chemical we're doing to the soil or even the ocean, because we're farming inland, we're not thinking about the reef. And fast forward years later, we can see the effect. There's coastal erosion, and we're saying, oh, we cannot blame coastal erosion on farmers. Yes, farmers are the one of the main persons who are responsible for coastal erosion, because when all these chemical goes into the sea, right, all these nutrients goes into the sea, it creates an algal bloom, and algae basically sucks the oxygen from the water. If you look on the countryside, and I'm referring to St. Vincent because I'm not so familiar with the other islands, but I'm sure the similar would happen in other islands where we had rivers. They're now stream. Because of all those nutrients went into the water, it causes eutrophication. And because of eutrophication, there is no oxygen because of the algal bloom, and it kills off the aquatic life within the water, right? The same thing that occurs in the coastal areas. All these nutrients go down to the coastal areas and they cause these algal blooms, and it affects the coral reefs and all these sort of things. So yes, we are partly responsible for some of the coastal erosion that is occurring. Yes, we know the rise in water temperatures are responsible for the coral bleaching. And when we have the coral bleaching, we then have these corals being exposed, or the immune system of these corals weaken, and so they're susceptible to disease. So now when we have a hurricane, these corals are not in place or they're damaged, so that we have storm surges coming into the island. But now that we are going to learn a bit more about sustainable agriculture, I'm hoping that individuals will take some time and look at the way that they actually currently farm and try to change it and try to be a bit more environmental friendly. Right? So some of the key principles of sustainable agriculture, you have to think about environmental health. That is very important. And I just touched on that a while ago. Not only the waterways, but even the soil. Oftentimes, the areas where they used to have banana production, yes, most farmers are doing things like root crops and so on. But some farmers encounter problems when they're even going to put in crops like vegetables and so on, because they keep consistently thinking, okay, a disease is affecting the vegetables, and you're going to add some sort of chemicals, or you're going to add some sort of fertilizer, or you're not getting the yield that you're supposed to get. But over a period of time, constantly adding chemicals and fertilizer to the soil could cause the soil to be degraded. Sometimes when you dig into the soil, you cannot even find as simple as an earthworm. So we'll discuss more about soil health next week, Tuesday. So I'm just touching on it for now. So environmental health is very important. Even if we're talking environmental health, I could speak about my area where I'm living. I can't tell the last time I see a hummingbird. I remember growing up and had to, when we had peas outside drying, and the dry peas so that they can pop, so you can, thresh them and get the seeds out so that you can replant, you used to have to be running things like blackboard. You don't see blackboard around anymore because all these chemicals are sprayed into the environment and it's damaged. Also, speaking about environmental health, a lot of people, when they get into farming, if you're given a piece of land, the first thing they think about doing is removing the trees, which is incorrect, because when you remove the trees, not only that you damage the soil, but you're removing the nice microclimate that is needed for agriculture production. You're damaging the ecosystem. You're removing the habitat for many animals that live in the wild, and then you wonder what happens, you know? So you have to think when you're farming to farm, thinking about the environment. Environmental health is important. So sustainable farming practice, protect and enhance the natural environment. The aim is to minimize pollution, and as I mentioned, with the runoff of all the chemical, conserve water in terms of, you can do many things to conserve water. So when I get into water management next week, Thursday, I'll stress on some factors that you can use to basically conserve water and also improve soil health, right? But we must focus on promoting biodiversity, because when you promote biodiversity, you enhance the ecosystem and then you can have healthy plants, right? So some examples of environment health, you can do things like crop rotation or polyculture. Polyculture is very important, where you would do intercropping, companion planting, and agroforestry. So intercrop with another crop so they can benefit each other. And this requires research, because oftentimes you can put in a crop and it's not compatible with the other. So intercropping is very important. Companion planting, in terms of planting a crop that would benefit the other. So when you plant your things like your basil, you will put things like tomato because they complement each other. The marigold to repel insects, and different types of herbs you can intercrop with your tomatoes and your cucumbers. Cucumbers and dill go very well together. So you have to do research, right? Agroforestry, very, very important, because when you have an area, and when I'm talking about agroforestry, we're talking about multiple layers or multiple stories of crops. So on the ground, you could have things like peanuts or sweet potato, pumpkin. This will cover the ground. This will help to conserve moisture. This will help to prevent soil erosion. Then above, you can have maybe your peppers, your tomatoes, and so on. And then above again, you can have your bananas, or you can have fruit trees. And then you can have your big other trees above. And all these large trees, not only that they in agroforestry system, it actually helps to reduce the incidence of a high wind damaging your crop, especially when you have your high intensity of wind. That area also creates a nice microclimate, so you're able to conserve moisture, less evaporation and transpiration of water from the plants. So then you will have a nice microclimate that will keep those plants nice and cool, and they won't dry out, especially when we experience our dry season. The use of organic fertilizers, and not only organic fertilizers, but things like organic matter, because what we need to realize, chemical fertilizer feeds the plant. It does not feed the soil. So we have to also take into consideration feeding the soil, right? Efficient water management, such like drip irrigation. Another key principle is economic profitability, right? For sustainability to be viable, agriculture practice must be economically profitable for the farmers. And oftentimes, most farmers, especially because we have an aging population of farmers, they cannot even tell you if they're farming profitable, right? They just basically going through the motion. They grew up in farming, they get involved in farming, and they just continue along the line. They don't keep records, they don't know the cost of certain things, they don't know how much they applied because they just applied willy-nilly, right? They cannot come and say, well, from this acre of sweet potato, I planted XY amount of vine, I got XYZ amount of sweet potatoes, and I only input certain, my inputs were XYZ, or I only put in certain amount of fertilizer. Which farmer can we walk up to today and get these information? You can hardly get these information from farmers. Oftentimes the extension officer might have somewhat information. It may not even be correct because it might be from guesstimation, right? So You have to improve productivity without exhausting the natural resources, reduce dependency on costly inputs like synthetic fertilizer and pesticides, create a resilient farming system. And when you're talking about resilient farming system, this is where you engage in polyculture. So you'll have a area with many different types of plant that one can repel the other, and so insects or disease from the other. So we can have a resilient farming system. You're not only going to focus on one crop, because if that one crop is wiped out by pests, that means that is why people, well, that's why agriculture is a risk, because if you put in one crop and that is wiped out by a pest, what happens? That means all the money. So you must think about, you know, in that same small area, you have to maximize production. I mean, there are people who are still planting corn 3 feet apart, like seriously. I mean, you don't need to plant corn 3 feet apart. Plant can go as close as 1 foot apart, right? Even closer than that, if you're going to monitor, take care of them and those sort of things, right? So you have to think about maximizing. Sometimes I listen to people and they say, oh, the space that they have, they cannot do any sort of production. I mean, give me a break. You can do production there, but you are still in the old system in terms of the old time spacing, where you still even planting things like watermelon and pineapple 3 feet apart. These things can be planted closer to maximize production and to be able to actually manage them better, right? So social and economic equity, sustainable agriculture must promote fairness and equity for all participants in the food system, from the farm worker to the consumer, right? It seeks to ensure, one, fair wages, and oftentimes we don't seem to give fair wages to the worker, and at the same time, there are workers who do not give a fair return. But if you find someone, a laborer who can work properly, I think they should be paid properly, right? Access to nutritious and affordable food for all communities, support small and local farms in a global food market. So we must support everyone, you understand? And listen, sustainable agriculture or agriculture production at home is very, 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 very important now. I don't know how much people have gone to the supermarket and seen most, well, I can speak about St. Vincent. The shelf is empty. After Hurricane Beryl, you cannot get sweet peppers, you cannot get tomatoes. There's a lot of things that you cannot get, but I'm hoping at the end of this training, I can see pictures of folks involved in different methods of farming. Even if you're living in a concrete jungle, at the end of today's presentation, you will have ideas. You can leave with ideas that you can actually start farming. Right? Why is sustainable agriculture important? Food security, very, very important. And I mean that word has been going around often. That's one of the words that you hear very often now, and you also hear climate change, right? So food security is very important. And you have to remember food security rests on 4 pillars. And oftentimes we are not actually, and we're not achieving food security because the 4 pillars are not oftentimes achieved, right? So we're talking about stability, access. And when we're talking about access, access to the food we also must be able to afford it. And oftentimes there's access, but we can't afford. Because when you walk into the supermarket and there's no local lettuce, and you have to pay $36 or $40 for a pack of romaine lettuce, I mean, it's not affordable to everyone. You understand? Right? So food security with global population growing, sustainable practice ensure long-term food security. Now, as I mentioned before, we have been talking about sustainable agriculture. Years ago, many years ago, you had heard about the Green Revolution, and that was because of the rising population. And because of the rising population, you had to increase the amount of food that is available so that folks will not grow hungry. So you get involved in industrial agriculture, where it's farming on a large scale, a lot of pesticides, a lot of chemicals, a lot of fertilizer, and it damage not only the environment, but the soil and so on. But now we are trying to mitigate or bring back some of the damages that was done, try to, so we are involved in sustainable agriculture to ensure long-term food production without depleting the resources, right? For soil health, I would show you how a depleted soil look and how you can actually rejuvenate that soil, right? Another reason why sustainable agriculture is important for climate resilience. Sustainable agriculture helps to combat climate change by reducing the carbon footprints and enhancing ecosystem. We also have to take into consideration some climate smart agriculture practices, right? I will present some that is feasible to you today that you can actually do. And some of them people would say at the end, it's kind of going to be costly, but you have to look at it in terms of as a business, because if you invest in certain things and you look at agriculture as a business, it can repay. It can repay for that, whatever equipment you buy, whatever you need to set up to get where you are, right? Biodiversity conservation. Let me move this back because I'm not seeing my present. Right, biodiversity conservation, right? Diverse cropping system. And I mentioned that before, if you have a monocropping system and that monocropping system wipe out, you have nothing, you understand? So you have to have a diverse cropping system. So it can be more resilient to any sort of disaster that might happen in terms of pest or any sort of diseases that might wipe out the crop. So, but it must also be less reliance on chemical, so it can basically protect the ecosystem, right? And enhance wildlife habitats, right? Soil and water conservation, very important. A lot of people don't think about soil conservation and they don't even think about water conservation. The only time water conservation comes into play is when we have a dry season. Everybody starts saying, oh, you know, the crops this, the crops that, but during the rainy season, how many people are involved in water harvesting? You understand? I mean, there's so many things that you can do to also prevent, you know, your crop from going through water loss or water stress during drought. But a lot of people, as I say, you don't look at agriculture as a business and you're not going to put in the investment. Just remember the same amount of energy that you put into your daily work or wherever institution that you work on. If you have farming, you must put that same amount of energy into that in terms to get a proper return. Right. So the major components of sustainable agriculture, I'm going to list them and later on down I will actually go in depth and explain them. So the major component, first one, soil management. So you're talking about the fertility of the soil, right? The moisture of the soil. You could talk about the texture, right? The type of soil. All these things are very important. So soil management is very important because soil, once you take good care of your soil, it could help with moisture retention and those sort of things, right? Crop management in terms of crop rotation, intercropping, water management in terms of drip irrigation, water harvesting, disease and pest management, right? So you must be involved in integrated pest management practices. And later on down, I will go into that because when we talk integrated pest management practices, we're not talking about the minute you see an aphid on a plant, you're going to ask, what chemical you just use for that? No, you have to think about other practices, cultural practices, right? Where you may install such things as sticky traps to reduce the pest loads. You cannot always think about chemicals, right? And waste management, very important. Composting, when you harvest and the remnants are remaining, you should turn that into compost, right? Compost should be something. Everything from your farm, this shouldn't have a loss. You know, when you harvest the remain of whatever, either the sweet potato vine, if you don't have animals to feed it to, you should then turn it into compost, right? You must look at everything as a cycle in order to make proper money, right? You have to look at it as a business. Otherwise, it will be a hobby and you will be there like you're working for nothing. So some other sustainable agriculture practices, as I mentioned, we have crop rotation, very important in terms to know when to cycle your crop, in terms of if you have a solanaceous plant is here, and when I say solanaceous, I mean tomatoes, eggplant, sweet pepper. If you have them planted there and after a while, maybe you might see low yield or it's affected by some sort of pest and disease, you cannot go back and plant back a plant from that family there. You must then plant something maybe from the cucurbits family or from the leguminous family or something. So you must think about that. That's one reason for crop rotation. Another reason for crop rotation is after you have a heavy feeder, right? So you know corn is a heavy feeder, right? You must add back, you must put in a plant that will add back to the soil. So after planting corn, you would actually put back in things like maybe pigeon peas, you'll put in things like peanuts, you'll put in things like beans, right? You must add plants what would add back to the soil. So you know, leguminous crops go through the nitrogen fixing bacteria phase which add back nitrogen to the soil. And you know, nitrogen is one of the most limiting nutrients in the soil, because you could add fertilizer this morning. Once the sunlight hits it and you don't cover that into the soil, it evaporates, it's gone, right? That nitrogen, but you know the other is not going anywhere. But nitrogen is one of the most limiting nutrient in the soil. It's easy to evaporate. So you must know when to crop rotate. And all these go hand in hand with research. Research, ask question. And you know what is funny? The older folks have had it down pat, right? They literally had it down pat, but maybe they didn't understand, or they could not have explained the science behind it. But I grew up in farming with my grandparents. And when my grandfather would plant, he would put in, when he plants sweet potato, he would put in sweet potato, he would put in corn, he will put in pigeon peas, and he will put in cassava. Now, the corn would deter the rats, right? Because rats love sweet potato, right? So you would put in corn. Corn was basically, yes, if you have excess, you sell, but it was mainly for the home, right? And that would deter the rats in terms of the sweet potato. Then the sweet potato will harvest after, and then after the sweet potato is harvest, those vines remain there to decompose, but then the pigeon peas is growing. And then you know, while the pigeon peas is growing, it is adding back nitrogen to the soil. And whilst that is there, you still have the cassava growing, right? But in that field, after a while, after you harvest the sweet potato, you no longer go through and weed, because when those trees, pigeon peas tree get to a point, under that, you hardly have weeds growing. Those peach tree has an allopathic effect that actually there's no weeds that grow under there. And then those pigeon peas is adding nitrogen to the soil. And whilst that, you're waiting for the
Someone in the room. And what's the shoes doing in here?
Whilst you're using that, growing that pigeon peas, and it's adding back nitrogen to the soil, we're waiting for the cassava to come in, whilst we're waiting to also harvest pigeon peas at Christmas, right? Look at that. The soil is resting in that period of time. All those leaves from the pigeon peas fall to the ground, it's decomposed. The soil is resting in the time. By the time you take out the cassava and you decide to plow that land again, and then you start over the entire process, right? So the older people had it done, but we came in with, yes, new technologies, and there are new technologies that are successful. Don't get me wrong, but you also have to understand foundation, use that foundation and build on it, right? So this next point, drip irrigation, the running of tubing to the direct water to the roots of the plant, right? So when we talk about irrigation, irrigation is adding water to a plant. Whether you're going to use an irrigation system or you're going to use a watering can, but it's adding water to the plant. Now, one of the anytime someone comes to me and asks me, oh, what irrigation systems I should use, I always say drip irrigation. One, it takes the water directly to the root of the plant, because when you're talking irrigation, you have to think about water quality as well. And oftentimes, where are we getting the water from? If it's not from the main, if it's from the river close by, then you have to be careful, because you don't want to be growing things like lettuce and pak choy, and that water is going on the leaf of the plant and so on. So you take it to the root of the plant. Second reason, with drip irrigation, you can determine how much water you want to go to the plant by choosing the emitters. Now, when you're purchasing emitters, you would see half GPH, which is mean half gallon per hour, or 1 GPH, which is 1 gallon per hour, and so on. So when you purchase your emitters and you add it to that tubing, then you can determine when you turn on your system for 1 hour, you know, each plant is getting 1 gallon of water or half gallon of water. I don't entertain or tell people to buy the misters or the sprinklers, because with the misters, you can have fungal growth on your plant, right? The sprinklers can actually also, the power can actually knock your blossom off, and then you have easy spread of disease as well occurring there, right? Then you have another common sustainable agriculture practices. You have integrated pest management, and we'll talk about that a little further down. Planting cover crop to basically prevent soil erosion. and conserve moisture, growing diverse produce to ensure biodiversity and the food system is not lost, small scale agriculture, growing food for smaller local farms instead of on a large scale farm that you may not be able to handle, you may not have the manpower for weeding and so on. So you can have a small area in your backyard, and that can give you maximum output if you know exactly how to do it. And integrating livestock and crop, very important, because one of the organic matter that I actually like to use is from livestock. So livestock like sheep, goat, rabbits. Cattle, yes, but when you use cow dung, it comes with a lot of weed seed to deal with after, right? So I like to use sheep and goat, small ruminants, and rabbit, and these are whole manure, so I can add them to the soil and plant at the same time. But the only time I use chicken manure is when I'm making a compost, and it makes a lovely compost, right? That's a hot manure, and it can actually burn your plants. So that's the only time I use it, is if it's totally decomposed before I add it to the soil. And I love to add it in when I'm making a compost heap. So I will put it between the different layers, and it makes a lovely compost. Where is my slide second? Right. So what are some importance of sustainable agriculture in the Caribbean? We have a unique ecosystem, right? And biodiversity. So sustainable agriculture protects the Caribbean rich biodiversity by preserving natural habitats and reducing the harmful use of chemicals. So our main aim with sustainable agriculture is to reduce that excessive amount of use of chemicals, right? We are vulnerable to climate change and natural disaster. Now we have to also focus on climate smart farming practices, right? So with climate smart farming practices, it enhances the resilience to climate change, like from impacts of hurricanes, drought, and rising sea level, right? So when we talk about climate smart practices, we're talking about things like, you know, our greenhouses, and we're going to talk about different methods of planting, which I will get into further below, right? Agriculture dependence on food security for rural livelihood. We are very much dependent on agriculture here. And I know every time you read, you will hear about a rural area, but I think for far too long, we've put emphasis on too much pressure on the rural area. And I saw this when we had the volcano eruption, because most of that area was the red zone. And here we run into issues where we could not get certain type of crops that we would have wanted, right? So far too long, we put too much emphasis on the rural area, and the urban area can also be involved in agriculture because it's peri-urban farming. And there are many ways that people in the urban area can actually get involved in farming rather than always putting the emphasis or the stress on the rural areas, right? So reducing carbon footprints and enhancing resilient, sustainable farming practices, reduce carbon emission, right? This is basically through eco-friendly practices and renewable use of energy. Do you know that there are pumps in terms of, if you have a hydroponic system, there are solar pumps that we can use now. There are many things that we can use that are solar operated rather than using electricity that will actually need for more use of fossil fuels, right? So we can start thinking environmental friendly, less carbon emission on the environment. So sustainable farming and peri-urban farming. Sustainable farming, I should say, was most household long ago was self-sufficient. Now household are beauty sufficient because there more emphasis is placed on having a pretty lawn, having the best set of ornamentals, and nothing is wrong with that. But what about food? Now, if you're into ornamentals and you're going to do it as a business, I have no problem with that. But putting a big emphasis on just ornamentals and a pretty lawn, and at the end of the day, there's a need for food. You understand, there's a need for food. When someone build a home these days, the first thing to do is hire a landscaper. Now, I don't want to put any landscaper out of a job, but the first thing to do is hire a landscaper landscaper, get the lawn in, get the flowers in, get the ornaments in, get the pavers in, and then they go to the supermarket and then they complain or they meet me on the road and like, I can't get no fruits. Okay, how is that my problem? You have a whole backyard and you don't have a fruit tree? Oh, you have a nice ficus. That is so lovely. Eat it. You understand? We used to be, I grew up in a home, in a household that, and I'm living in, you could say, the central area, Annisvale, where in my backyard, I had orange, golden apple, tangerine, cocoa, plum, lime, breadfruit, coconut, cherry. I'm missing anything? Mango, trees, and orange. And then around under that, we had chickens. I had my goats I had to tie out. Mind you, we had farming land elsewhere, but whatever was there was additional here. There was ducks, there was turkey, and so on. So I grew up in a time when the only thing we used to buy from the supermarket is rice because we had everything. I didn't start drinking Kool-Aid until I went to secondary school when I got it from a friend because all I got was lime and whatever else. And, you know, strange enough, we're reaching a time where people are dying to get some lime juice. They wish they could put their hand on some passion fruit because these things are expensive, which when I grew up in a home where it's just there. So we have to think about being more self-sustainable. Whatever we need, we should have it growing in our backyard. You understand? If you visit my yard, I have pineapple. I only have one ornament out in my yard. No, I'm not telling you to do this, but we have to think about the rising cost of food prices and even not the rising cost, but the access to it, because there are times when you cannot even get something as much as a ripe banana. I went to the supermarket this week and I have not seen ripe banana on the supermarket shelf at Massey for over 2 weeks going, right? So we know that is because of burial and some farmers lost the trees and those sort of things, those banana plants and so on. But we need to be more self-sustainable, right? So self-sufficient farming is producing most or all of your food on your own land in the backyard. A self-sufficient farmer does little or no trading. If they have excess, they will trade, right? We have to think, even if we're living in the urban communities, we have to think along peri-urban. So peri-urban agriculture give women and non-head household a low barrier occupation that will support the family, aiding in a household productivity and giving women an outlet to assert themselves. So you will have a group of women and they will say, well, I grow lettuce. What you grow? I grow some tomato. I could give you some lettuce and you can give me some tomato. Simple things like that. And your home will have all the required vegetables and produce that you need. So you have to think about getting back into being self-sufficient. And even though, as I said, if you're living on a concrete jungle, there's a way for you to be self-sufficient. So stay tuned and you will see this, right? So we have to think about the 4 pillars of food security. Availability. There's some, and we can talk about after burial, there are things that was not available, right? And if there is even available, you cannot afford them. Access to it. When they may have things like breadfruit or whatever wrong provision or root crops that you need, but you don't have access to it because you may be living in the leeward side or the central side of the island, but it's on the countryside and you don't have access to it. So it might be available, but you don't have access to it. So obviously you cannot utilize it to create a nutritious meal. It's not just there. I mean, I've been looking around and I've been looking at the price of coconuts for the past 5 years, and the price of coconuts is rising. I remember as a little girl, coconut used to be like 20 cents, 10 cents, and then now one dry coconut is $3 and $4 and $5. You understand? Because folks are not even, they put in palms and they're not even thinking of putting in coconut. And then they go and they complain about coconut. But these are things that you can actually plant because coconut is another thing that helps to prevent soil erosion. So if you have sloping lands, put in some coconut, whether it's short coconut for water or the tall ones that you would need for making your coconut oil or whatever other coconut-based product. So you have to put in what you want. You understand? Last year, a bottle of coconut water, big bottles, was $10. It's now $12. You understand? So you have to, as I say, plant what you need, right? So right here in the first picture, there's a simple grow box. So if you're living on a concrete jungle, or you have soil that may not be of any good use, or it's not good texture, it's rocky, you can create some, sorry, I don't know why my thing go back. You can create something as simple as a grow box, right? You can use galvanized, you can use coconut body, you can use banana body, you can use blocks, and I'll show you some others. In this picture over here, this is just a part of my backyard years ago when I had put in my pineapples. They're bigger than that now. Well, this is them now. This is my backyard now. Well, I have pineapple both in my backyard and my the front part of my yard, just a little bit over 400, right? In my tires, I also plant things like sweet potato, right? So self-sustainable agriculture. Do you want to grow your own food, right? But it's limited by one, you have no available soil, you live in a concrete jungle, you have small yard space, or land tenure. Land tenure is the biggest problem, right? Access to land. So you can do something simple as a grow box, right? On the concrete area, you line the ground with some newspaper or cardboard, and you fill it with soil, compost, or you can put straw at the bottom, because oftentimes you may not have access to that amount of soil. So if you have straw remaining from trimming the yard, or cardboard and brambles and those sort of things, you put it to the bottom and then you pack your soil on top, right? I'll just keep going back, right? Sorry. In the second one, you have a PVC garden. You have old remnants of your dung pipe or your drain pipe. You can just cut them, or if you have pipes, you just cut the top off, fill it with soil, and you plant your crop, right? Most likely shallow rooted crops. So you can do things like your cabbage, pak choy, lettuce, those sort of things, kale, those Swiss chard and those sort of things. Tires. I know some people have their reservation about tires, but I have tires, and it's a part of my backyard as well. I have 100 tires that was recycled, and I also have pineapples planted in it. And no, I do not have a large backyard. So some other option, this is done at the college, in the top one, where you have some tires, and this is our little herb garden. So you have things like basil, mint, dill, I can't remember some of the other mints, holy basil, and other different herbs that is here, right? Coriander and those sort of things. Right, this is the same PVC garden with just some red lettuce. Now, if you have blocks, you can put in side. So if you use the blocks to create the grow box, in the holes around the blocks, you fill it and you put in your side, right? You could find an old pallet. This was in my yard a couple of years ago. You can find an old pallet and you can fill it with soil and you can plant some pak choy. This is a bag, the same bag that you buy the compost in, or the bag that you get your rice. Those people buy the large bag of rice and flour. You can fill it with soil, put it and lay it flat on the ground, cut holes and plant your pak choy. There's a lot of water bottles around. One from when you get bought water for after the hurricane and those sort of things, rather than dumping them or rather than having them fill up the rivers and other places, you can just cut them and plant your crops into them, and they would be around for a long time because they're not going to fall apart, they're not going to degrade. So you can have planters for a long time to come, right? That same barrel that you get food stuff from away, you can use it to grow food stuff. So you can create a strawberry planter. So basically what you do, you use a grinder, you cut holes across, you can heat it with a hot, one of those heat guns, or if you have a torch, and you can put a piece of wood and pull it out, or you can put a bottle, so you can create pockets. Then you fill that with soil, with a long PVC pipe in the middle, like a 3-inch or 4-inch PVC pipe. You must put holes in it, fill that with pebbles, and then you water it from the middle right there. You throw the water in the middle of that PVC pipe, and then it will go out to the areas where you have plants. Here in the second pictures, these are grow bags, and grow bags are not only coming in plastic now, they're fabric grow bags, and these grow bags you can grow any sort of thing you can grow. Sweet potato, you can grow English potato, you can grow. As I have here, I have pineapple, you can grow tomatoes, you can grow peppers, and so on. In the other one here, we have recycled tires where we have sweet potato growing. And again, to the bottom, there's a small hub garden that is at the college. We know we are entering soon into the bamboo season where you blow bamboo for All Saints, Guy Fawkes, whatever it is, rather than dumping the bamboo in the riverway, cut it out and create a bamboo planter. All these old guttering that was blown down during Hurricane Beryl, don't dump them. Just screw them onto the wall or put them on something raised, and you can grow your celery, you can grow your lettuce, you can grow your chive, you can grow whatever it is that you need in it, right? Just ensure you put holes in the bottom and you use it. It's all about recycling. Use anything, you can use anything. You have an old pot and it's done its time, it's discolored, punch hole in the bottom and you plant whatever you need to grow for your home, right? So this is what I was talking about, the strawberry planter. This is the PVC pipe that goes in the middle, and there's a hole that is cut at the bottom. The bottom of this is capped. The barrel is placed upon some blocks, and this is placed in the middle, capped at the bottom. The PVC pipes is filled with rocks, and it's in the middle, and then you fill all around with soil. When you're watering, you pour it into the middle of the PVC pipe, and it will basically filter it down and go to the roots of whatever plant that you have. And there's a lot of things that you can plant. You can plant at the side, you can plant lettuce, you can plant chive, you can plant anything that you want to think about at the side. Once you create the pockets, the deeper the pockets, anything you can plant. You can plant cucumbers, you can plant, and obviously, you know, you'll have to trellis it. You can plant tomatoes, you can plant sweet peppers, and then on the top of it now, instead of just leaving it like that, you can put in things like ginger, you can put in sweet potato, you can put in English potato, any root crops that can be at the top, onion, whatever the case may be. But as I said, the barrel you get with food, use it to grow food, right? These are some vertical planters that were created by my students. One day we just found some pieces around and we just decide we're gonna create some planters. We just basically heat them and create pockets with a bottle, fill them with soil, and then we plant lettuce in them. So they were ideal for planting shallow roots. So in a small area where one lettuce will grow, you can have a vertical planter where you can get 10 lettuce. So understand, space is not a problem, because even if you live in a concrete jungle, this planter can go in a flower pot. Instead of having one lettuce in a flower pot, no, you will have enough lettuce for you and your neighbor, even to sell to others. Understand? So these are some A-frame planters. You have the A-frame bamboo planters that has soil in them. And because of A-frame, you get to plant on both sides. So in a small area where you might have 6 or 10 lettuce, you can have over 40 to 50 lettuce in a small area, just creating an A-frame. So here you have one with soil, and on this side you have one with water. So this one is hydroponic. So in the tank, the bin below here, which one of these bin, basically $60 to $70 EC dollars, and you can get some PVC pipe, and here you can harvest your lettuce every 3 to 4 weeks. Just imagine in a frame like this with 100 holes or 60 to 100 holes, and you can, in a small space like this, you come home an evening and you just check, make sure, because it's pump, it's there. You can have solar pump, it's just running, it's cycling the water. You don't have to go out and wet it. You don't have to go out and weed. You don't have to do anything. And you can be a supplier to either Massey or a hotel or a restaurant with nicely grown lettuce. And in this, you can choose to grow whatever type of lettuce you want. It can be celery, it can be whatever it is that you desire to grow. You can just take it, grow your crop in something like this. Look at the small space that this is occupying, right? You can put a shed over it. You can cover it with shade cloth, and create an income in such a small space rather than going out into the field, because you have to think smart. You have to think climate smart agriculture, right? Rather than going out into the field, especially if you don't have access to land. You have this, you have to make an investment. But let would be real, even though if you make an investment, by selling these, and right now a head of lettuce is what now no longer $5, you're talking $8-9. You will generate back your income. So you make your investment, because you have to look at this as a business. Make your investments and then you can get your returns.
Sorry, Miss Edwards, we have one hand raised. Is it okay for
right.
you to take one question?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Fernand, and Fernand, you can go ahead and ask your question. Your hand is raised.
Thank you. I was just curious about the vertical planters, the PVC ones. Are they 2-inch or 4-inch PVCs?
Oh, they were 3-inch. They're 3-inch PVC.
And did you fill them just with soil? Because I remember you had another model with the barrel, and I think you had a PVC inside of it for added filtration.
Right. So it was filled with soil, but in the soil, you have little pieces of rocks in between for the movement of water.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks for that extra
All right.
info.
All right. Right. These are some other things that you can do. They are called grow boxes. So if you're going to plant things like sweet potato, dasheen, root crops, you can use 2 rows of blocks. So one at the bottom, one at the top, fill it with the soil, put in the sweet potato, right? So in the top one, that is a root crop box. Second one at the bottom, this one was done at the college. This is where we grow some sweet potato, and trust me, we had good returns. Maybe tomorrow I'll add in some pictures so I can show you what was harvested. Same here as a grow box, sweet potato. Here's also a grow box. These were some mustard greens and lettuce that was planted. They had just planted small that day, and then it was basically fenced around with some coconut body, because I was driving through an area and I saw a man cutting down some coconut trees, and I asked him if I could have them, and on that area I created a grow box. So there are 2 hands raised, Latoya.
2 hands, yes. I think and Maria, I think your hand was up first. Go ahead, ask a question, please.
Miss Edwards, I'm from the Argyle area. You know me. I have a problem now where I notice my lettuce bed is actually organic because I use only sheep manure. And I've noticed in the soil that there is some tiny whitey looking stuff, and the lettuce production has dropped tremendously. What can be the problem there?
So before I could diagnose the problem, the small whitey looking stuff, does it look like a fungus? Is it possible you can send a picture?
It looks like a powder in some instance, and maybe when you pull, sometimes when you pull the root of the lettuce, it has like a set of fine looking, as we would say, like red ants.
Okay. So did you treat the soil with any sort of organic fungicide, organic pesticide? None?
No, because I said I'm not sure if it is something that could have been in the manure from the pen, or if it is something actually from the plant.
So you say you see a lot of ants, right?
Something looking like ants.
All right. So I have another question before. Do you eat around that area?
No.
Okay, cool. So I was just wondering about the ants. If you can send me a picture, but even when you're using some of these animal manure, what I often do is drench my soil, right? So I'll drench my soil with neem. So basically you can crush some neem leaf, place it in a barrel with water, leave it there, cover it down, the heat will help to dry it out, and then you can drench your soil with some neem. Or you can buy the neem oil and drench your soil. But it would be nice if you share a picture, send a picture in the chat so then I can see what it is that you're talking about, so I can give you a better answer. Because
Well,
the ants, I'm puzzled about the ants, one, because one of the things I normally tell individuals, even though the only thing you should take around your plant is some water. You understand? No eating, no, you might feel hungry, you want to snack on some crackers. No, those things are hosts for pests. They bring ants, and the ants then store in your root because they go underground, they store, and then they're going to disrupt your soil. So those white things that you might be seeing is what normally found in the ant's nest, right? So you may have an ant's nest somewhere within that grow box.
the other part of it is not only there, it is the entire section that I do my gardening, even in this land itself. And I have noticed this just after the volcanic eruption.
Okay.
Because the agriculture department came in and they tested the soil, because I had some sorrel planted, came up very nice, and upon blossoming and stuff like that, everything just started turning red and everything just went dead.
So what was the result of the soil test? What test did they do?
They said they found nothing.
What were they looking for? What test did they do?
I am not sure what test they did, but when I asked the extension officer what was their finding, she said that the specialist said that they found nothing in the soil that would have affect the soil, and since that is like, production has dropped tremendously.
What's the color of your soil? Does it look pale?
No.
It's nice and dark?
It's nice and dark, and some parts of it is like coffee.
All right. So do me one favor. Send me some pictures tomorrow, and I will take it from there. So my number is 532-5892.
Let me get that number. 532. 532.
5892. So the next question, Latoya, so we could go.
Thank you. Yes, in the interest of time, we'll take one more question, and then
Yes.
we'll continue with the presentation, and all other questions will be
We'll come at the end.
please. So we had one other person with their hands up, they seem to have taken it down. Okay, so I'll take a question from the chat then, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
So somebody asked in the chat, and I'm sorry, but this is the first one I'm seeing. How long does pesticides stay in soil?
It depends on the type of pesticides you use, because each pesticide have a different re-entry period. So based on the pesticide, organic pesticides do not stay, or biopesticides do not stay in the soil for a long time. But it all depends on the type of pesticides. So I cannot give a exact time frame. All right. So that's why we could continue, and the questions at the end. All right. I'm not sure if you're hearing me, Latoya, but I'm going to continue. We'll take the other questions at the end. All right. So some challenges in Caribbean agriculture. Yes, we have climate change. We're experiencing it. So we have frequency in hurricane. We have the drought periods that can last for a long time. We have the rising temperature, which we have problems where folks will experience things like the crop getting things like blossom end rot. And blossom end rot is not only from the loss of water in the soil, but the loss of water along with not enough calcium being available to the plant, because calcium goes to the plant once there's water in the soil. But if there's no water, the plant cannot uptake the calcium, so it end up having things like blossom end rot. So rising temperature, damage crops, reduce water availability, and obviously with the stress that is placed on crops, you will encounter food insecurity. So to threaten food security. Then we have soil degradation and erosion. So poor land management. So this is when you put in a lot of chemicals into the soil, a lot of fertilizers in the soil eventually degrade over a period of time, right? And then it's going to be easily eroded because when they have the soil is high in organic matter and there's a lot of worm and water in the soil, it helps the soil to aggregate. So it have clumps in the soil. But when the soil has no sort of activity because everything has been killed off by excessive amounts of fertilizer and chemicals, then the soil becomes literally like sand. It's loose. There's no soil aggregation. It's loose. It's easy for the wind blow the soil. So easy to have things like soil erosion by wind and also by water, right? So obviously there'll be a reduction in soil fertility. And when we get to soil health, I'll be able to tell you how to look at your soil to determine whether it's healthy, whether it's high in organic matter, if it's not, right? So with reducing fertility, it will have a diminishing agriculture productivity, especially during the impacts of drought season, right? Overuse of pesticides and chemical, excessive use of chemicals can basically harm the ecosystem. It degrades the soil because, as I said, I would show you on Soil Health Day, the problem with adding all these chemicals to the soil. And then it may change your mind in terms of running to the agriculture input warehouse, not that I want to stop any sale, and buying all these things like Fast Stack and the Diazonon and the Malathion and those sort of things, right? The only thing with organic pesticide or biopesticide, it's a little bit more intensive in terms of you have to monitor, you have to look, you have to take care. It's like a baby, but over a period of time, practice will become, a habit, right? Right, so it create pesticide resistant pests because if you keep adding, and we know one of the reasons why we have resistance to pests, oftentimes the instruction can say 5 ml to 1 gallon of water, but no, if 5 ml is enough, now we add 20 mLs. It will be very much enough. And all these things cause toxicity and it creates pests become resistant to any sort of pesticide in that brand or that type of pesticide, right? So you have to be very careful, right? So pesticides threaten long-term sustainability. Then we have water scarcity, limited freshwater resources, unpredictable rainfall. But because we still have unpredictable rainfall, a lot of folks is not thinking about water harvesting. Maybe for your project, for your practical, you'll be, well, not maybe, for your practical, you will be able to be exposed to things like water harvesting because I'm supposed to start a water harvesting project implementation soon at the college. So yes, you'll be able to visit that and see what we have set up as it relates to water harvesting, right? Then there's economic challenge. Small scale farmers face high input costs, obviously inadequate infrastructure, limited market access. We do not have a marketing board. And I've sat and listened in chats and seeing chats where people's asking, what's the price of pumpkin? What's the price for eggplant? What's the price of okra? Because we don't have a marketing board, so there's no set price. We do not have a marketing information system. Now, in Trinidad, if you go onto NAMIS, which is a marketing information system, you can see the price of what produce are being purchased at, what is being sold at, what time of the year it's a good price, selling price, and those sort of things. So it could help you to basically predict or set up, your production in such a way to obtain proper or a good income, right? So we do not have a marketing information system. So we end up having problems with market access. Unless you have a contract with supplying to things like supermarkets and so on, then you don't have access to any other markets. Unless you're going to go down to the market on a Saturday or a Friday and sell. And I have my issues as it relates to that, right? Lack of financial support. Oftentimes there's a lack of financial support to put into your business. And if it's, let me see if I can stop that noise. Right. Right. So you could actually hinder the ability to thrive, right? Because there's no financial support. Whereas in certain countries have agriculture development bank. Here in St. Vincent, we do not have any agriculture development bank. I don't know if the other islands have agriculture development banks that they can actually have access to certain finance. And even though if you have access to certain finance, there are time when you go, and I could hear from stories where you go to get access to finance for agriculture, and they would say, it's not wise for we to give you money for that, or it's not wise for this and those sort of things. So proper access to finance is very, very important. Land tenure, one of the major problems as it relates to farming, because you do not have access to land. I have people who are always looking for land so that they can farm. They're willing, they're interested in farming, but they do not have the access to farm lands. Let me just see if I can find where the noise is coming from. Someone mic is on. Okay, found it. Right. Right, so access to land is very, very important. So insecure land ownership or access to land limits farmers. Earlier this year, I encountered a young farmer who said in a session that he has over 100 and something head of sheep and goat, but he's asked to move from the land where he's actually been farming for years, and his parents has been farming and his grandparents has been farming, and he's now asked to move, and he already make investment, put in infrastructure to put pens and what's not for his animals, and he was asked to move. So in a situation like that, that can be very frustrating. Where is that young man going to go? So making long-term investments when you don't have access to your own land can basically affect your agriculture production. So how do we go about combating these challenges now? So that's what we're going to talk about, combating these challenges. We know all the challenges we face as it relates to agriculture in the St. Vincent or in the Caribbean as a whole. Now we have to know ways and means of combating these challenges, and we have to make investment, and we have to take into consideration, because we were here, we saw the effect of Hurricane Beryl, we saw whatever we had on the outside went down. I mean, I was blessed in terms of our greenhouse at the college stood tall, stood strong, they were not impacted or damaged in any way, right? So we have to think about the change in climate, the unpredictable weather, and we have to make investment. Yes, agriculture is a risk, but if you don't make the investment, we gonna eat your finger, and we can't eat our finger, right? Combating challenges and technologies. Sustainable agriculture in the Caribbean can greatly benefit from advanced production method like hydroponic, aquaponic, aeroponic, and tropical greenhouse production, and also microgreens. I add microgreens last because I know a lot of people may not realize that microgreen is a very good business in terms of it's quick, it's an easy turnover, and it's pretty costly because what I pay a small I buy at Secret Grace, and for a small box, right? I normally pay like $14 or $15 around it, right? So hydroponic production. Hydroponics is a soilless farming method where plants are grown in nutrient-rich soil, making it useful for small island nation with limited arable land, right? So if you have, you're living on a concrete jungle, I know you saw the picture up above where there's an A-frame hydroponic system, and you can grow up to 100 lettuce in a small area. It don't have to be lettuce, it don't have to be the regular lettuce, it could be lettuce like romaine lettuce or whatever it is that you desire, right? It could be oak leaf, it could be red lettuce, it could, whatever you desire, right? Because you have to take into consideration something that I will talk about later on down, the market demand. People, I mean, farmers are still growing a lot of root crops, but let me face the fact. When you go to the supermarket, you're not looking for root crops. Yes, 1 or 2 people still use root crops. No, I have no problem with who want to grow root crops, but you have to take into consideration the demand of individuals today. Young people hardly know how to utilize root crops. Yes, maybe we need to have a session to tell them you can make a tanya log and a dasheen ball and breadfruit fritters and all these sort of things. But until we do that, they would see these things as nothing that they can utilize. So everybody's thinking about superfoods. So they want the microgreens, they want kale, they want dragon fruit, they want cantaloupe and all these sort of things, butternut squash, they want lettuce, they want, cabbage and so on. But most of the farming population is into root crop production. So to get our nice different color bell peppers, basically we buy what is imported, which we can literally grow these things here ourselves. To get some nice large tomatoes, we buy what is imported. We can grow nice tomatoes. I grow tomatoes at the college where one tomato is almost a pound, right? So we can grow all these things here, right? So hydroponic production is one of the way to combat your challenges, right? You don't have to start big. You could start small. What I often notice with farmers or individuals getting into agriculture, they get flustered because one, they want to go big one time. No, start small. Either you're going to start growing some for your household, or you're going to grow somewhere you can sell excess to people in your community, because you can't think about always going to this hotel or the supermarket. Think about your community. I mean, once you live in a community where you're respected and well knitted, you can basically form a chat and say, okay, I'm putting in some lettuce, in the next 3 weeks, it'll be ready. Let me know how much you need. Same thing when you're doing your poultry production. If you have folks in your community, you can get your stuff moved, right? So hydroponics, efficient use of space, because you're thinking vertical farming. It maximizes space with limited land. Water conservation. When you plant in the field, when you wet that plant or you give water to the plant, you irrigate that plant, the rest is runoff, it's lost. But in hydroponics, the water is cycled. So you use 90% less water than you would do with traditional farming, right? You get to use minimal amount of chemical. So you have a control system, you reduce pests, you reduce pesticide, you reduce the use of any sort of insecticide, you don't have to go out and weed, and you benefit from the health of the environment. And it's a nice like a hobby too. You understand? You learn, you practice, and you have you may make some mistakes and you learn from that. But hydroponic system is the way to go. Look at it, small area, large production, right? So in the first one, you saw it before, the A-frame, then you have the Mr. Stackies below. And I'm just going to show a small video here.
A crazy hydroponic system that's actually pretty easy to build.
Small one for home.
There's a pump down in here. The water flows all the way up this tube. There's also some nutrients in it, and it comes down into these channels. Because of the way they're angled, gravity just brings it right back down to the bottom, and the process will start all over. You can grow amazing plants in a system like this. You guys like it?
So, right, you can start with a small
system
system like that for your home. Simple, start small and expand. Oftentimes when I listen or I meet young farmers or young people interested in getting into farming, they normally think about, oh, I have to go cut down this area. No, start small and expand as you go by. You understand? Because you can actually become flustered, overwhelmed. You don't know what to do, a lot of weeding. So if you start small, you can put in things like ground cover and find different ways and means of maximizing a small space to get large production, right? So here you have, in the first picture, you have a flatbed hydroponic system. Look at how close these cabbage are, right? And they are going to grow into nice head. You don't have to go out and weed, you don't have to apply pesticide. This is a hydroponic system. Sorry. This is a hydroponic system. Then you have here your oil containers. You can go ask all those restaurants who use these containers for what they use the oil from. You can collect it and you can do that. In this one, you have grow bags, and each of these grow bags has a hose running into it or a drip line. And look at in that small space how much peppers that you can harvest. But no, you're looking to go and dig up an acre land to harvest the same amount of peppers when you can buy 3-pound or 5-pound grow bags, fill it, and actually get your production done, right? Another video to show you how to start small.
You can always start small if you don't want to start big. In fact, I encourage it. A lot of people get too excited in the beginning And while that's a good thing, a lot of times it leads to people getting overwhelmed. Once you start growing your food, I want you to stick with it. Don't take on too much in the beginning. Learn the basics. Most of all, have fun. If you can't grow a traditional garden with all the weeding and tilling and composting, luckily, there's a lot of alternatives. So let's share this with the world so we can all keep on growing.
Right, start small, think big. So you don't have to start with a large system. There's also the Dutch bucket system. Maybe when I set up my Dutch bucket system at the college, you can come in and see how the Dutch bucket system normally run. Within a Dutch bucket hydroponic system, you can grow things like bell pepper, you can grow tomatoes, you can grow whatever it is you want, cucurbit crops, so things as cucumber, butternut squash, zucchini. So you can start small as this simple picture in the corner here, or you can go with a 6-bucket Dutch bucket system. When you get there, then you can expand into doing larger Dutch bucket system. And within the Dutch bucket, you can put cocoa coir, which is coconut fiber. You can put perlite. You can put hydroton clay pebbles, which is you see here in the picture here, that is hydroton clay pebbles. These are some small pebbles that you use, and then that is what your plant is anchoring. The water is there and it's dripped out back to the bottom, and it just keeps cycling. The same set of water you use, sometime when it goes down, you just add it and that water keeps cycling. So in that small area, you can grow a lot of tomato just for your household. And I mean, even with one plant, that is a lot for your household. So if you have 6 plants, you can actually sell, because later on in maybe the last session, I will show you about removing the leaves and just focus on fruit production, right? Aquaponic production, very, very important. Something I really want to push at the college. I started the framework, and I have to make some adjustments and actually have my fish them in by maybe next year or this semester. Sorry, but I'm working on it. So with aquaponics, no, you do not have to buy any sort of fertilizer or anything. Then the fish waste is what is used to basically grow your plant, and that water is cycled over, filtered, cycled over to the plant and basically grow, right? So it's an integrated system where it recycles water and the nutrients, make it highly efficient and environmental friendly. So you're going to grow vegetables, and you're also going to be involved in protein production, because aquaponics allow the cultivation of both fish and plants, which is ideal for the Caribbean, especially that we are so heavily dependent on fish protein. And oftentimes you go to the fish market, they don't have certain fish, it don't have this. And if you taste tilapia is very delicious. So you can think about something like this. As I said, you can start small. 2 tilapias in a small area, cycle over to your crop, and you can just start small and go from there. Understand, do a bit more reading. There are courses online that you can enter to understand aquaponic production, and you start small and then you can increase, right? This is economic diversification, because the ability to raise fish and a crop together offer the farmer diversified income upstream, making the system more resilient. So if the crop failed, he still have his fish, right? So he would always have some sort of income, right? Reduction in waste. The waste from the fish serve as a valuable resource for the plant to grow, reducing the environmental footprint, and its local food security. Aquaponics can sustain both production of both vegetables and fish. And I have a couple of pictures here. So I'm going to show you a short video for aquaponics.
You know, instead of waiting for a good day to happen, you know, waiting around, ups and downs. So I'm just saying, look.
Right, so that's just some example of a beginner's aquaponic. So you have the fish one side and it's cycle over. So these are also deep water system, right, where the fish is at the bottom, and at the top there's the styrofoam with the holes for you, the float, so that you can put your kale, your lettuce, your Swiss chard and everything, and it gets the nutrients from below and continue growing, right? At the bottom here is just similar like the first one, where the water is cycled and go into the plants and recycled back into the fish pond and so. So as I mentioned, these are some options. You start small, but you think big. I know it's going to be investment, but think about it. Right? Aeroponics. This is something that I really, really, really want at the college. And I'm working on getting 1 or 2 donated to us, right? So aeroponics, the system is a misting system. It delivers a nutrient to the plant root, and it requires 90% less water than the traditional agriculture production. So let me play the small video so you can see.
This is 4 weeks growth of 52 lettuces on an aeroponic tower, allowing us to harvest 90% more plants per square meter when compared to traditional farming. And in our farm, we grow tons of lettuce, meaning thousands of kilos of lettuce annually. This is how we do it. It all starts by soaking agricultural rock wool in water for 20 minutes. Rock wool comes in trays that are split into 98 individual cubes. These rock wool trays allow us to germinate our lettuce seedlings so that we can transplant them onto the tower, which will grow into mature lettuce plants that are ready for harvest. But before we can harvest the lettuce from the towers, we need to add the seeds. Lettuce seeds come in either their natural form, where they are tiny and difficult to handle, or they come as pelleted seeds, meaning that these seeds are normal lettuce seeds that are coated with clay or diatomaceous earth. When we do a full tray of normal lettuce seeds with 98 holes, it takes us 9 minutes. However, with pelleted seeds, it only takes us 3 minutes. Therefore, for sowing, it is much faster and efficient to use pelleted seeds due to their uniform spherical shape. However, pelleted seeds can cost up to 3 times more than normal lettuce seeds, but with the reduced labor involved, it is well worth it.
So this is a sorry, go back to me. This is a system. I know you can find them on Amazon, not this one, but this one in the first picture here. I mean, they're pretty costly, but the fact that I can do something like this in my household if I had a large household, but it's just me. But this is something I want to get done at the college so that folks could maybe come in and see the benefit and see how quick you can cycle some lettuce, because lettuce is a lot of water, and you will harvest in a shorter space of time, and you can actually sell. So these are ways that if you live on a concrete jungle, you don't have any excuse. You make the investment and you will get back a return. So you can think about doing different varieties of lettuce, right? So the other one that everyone knows about, the tropical greenhouse production. Tropical greenhouse are specially designed to handle hot and humid climate of the Caribbean, right? So some of the benefits, you have things like climate control. So the greenhouse can protect your crop from unpredictable weather. So if you have heavy rains, say you want to knock off the blossom, if there's a lot of intense heat, then yes, the greenhouse get hot, but at the same time, you can minimize that, keep that area small where you're going to add your water. So you can install the hydroponic system, your irrigation system, and then you can use your timers to basically know. Now, in terms of something I will talk about later on, precision agriculture, when you add things like timers, and there are modern day timers that are Wi-Fi, that can actually have temperature control. It would say, oh, it's hot now, let the water come up, turn on water so that the soil or the plant can be kept cool, and those are the things, those things with sensors, right? So we have to think along that line, especially if we're doing it as a business, right? So we could reduce some of these imports, because if you look online, or you see there's a lot of recall as it relates to things like lettuce, especially lettuce and cucumbers. There's a lot of recall because they're contaminated with listeria and those sort of things. And listeria have an incubation period of up to 40 to 70 days, and then you can consume something 2 weeks ago, and then weeks later you are affected. You don't know where it's coming from, if it's contaminated, if it came from the batch that it's got. But when you grow your own, right, you know what you are consuming, right? In a greenhouse production, you can deal with pest control. You can you have higher yields. You do have higher yields in a greenhouse production, and it has resource efficiency. So you can put things like hydroponics in along the walls of your tropical greenhouse and utilize a greenhouse, because you don't always have to utilize the floor, but you can utilize above, because you have to think vertical to basically make money. So these examples here are some pictures of the greenhouse down at the college. So we trellis when we plant things like butternut squash and cucumber and tomatoes. We normally trellis them. So I'll just play a small video so you can see.
I'm grateful for the sun. Made me appreciate this. Made me appreciate this. I'm grateful for the things. I'm thankful for the sun. They only make my heart. I was thinking I was drowning in doubt. The weight of all the pain was weighing me down. Pulled it together and I pulled myself out. Learned a lesson, learned a lesson. That there's a lot you gotta go through, hell yes. But that's what got me strong, I got no regrets. And I got only love and no bitterness.
Right? So, if you notice on the ground in the greenhouse, there is ground cover, so we can focus more on crop production rather than weeding. So we can focus on identifying pests. And if you also notice within that greenhouse, there are sticky traps that would help to reduce the pesticide loads. So these are some things that you can put in. I warn my students, there's no eating in my greenhouse. You cannot take snacks, you cannot take, because these things will take in pests, they will take in ants. And when we, as we say, when we get into that section where we're going to talk about biosecurity measures, you will understand not to let someone come onto your farm or your production area, say they're eating apple or they're eating mango and throw it there, because that's pest right there. You don't know what's in the seed of the mango. You don't know where the apple was, what pest and disease that it bring. So you don't allow no sort of eating. You know, they want to tell you, oh, it's going rotten down, it's organic, but they're also bringing pests onto your farm. So keep people out of your farm, especially if they are coming from a farm and coming onto your farm. They can be bringing pests and diseases onto your farm, right? So last one, I think I have microgreen production. So microgreen production involves the growing young edible plants, right? Harvested at the early stage, usually within 1 to 3 weeks of germination. Microgreen is known for its intense flavor and is very nutritional, because everybody, as I said, we have to focus on the demand. Everybody is looking to be a bit more health conscious. They're talking about superfoods and all these sort of things. We can't keep importing everything that we can actually do here. So you have to take a look around. When you're going to get involved in farming, don't just jump out there and say, let me plant some tomato. And then you jump in and you plant Roma tomato. Who are you selling that for? Because personally, I don't want no Roma tomato, because I'm not going to be making bulgur of my tomatoes to slice and put, either if I'm making a sandwich or I'm making a nice salad and what's. And I like nice tasting tomato. I don't like these acidic and some of them that are tasting just like grainy. No, you have to do research, know what is your market demand, who you're going to supply with whatever vegetables. If you're going to, like, for example, I have a little bias. Yes, watermelon is watermelon, but I love yellow watermelon. It has a different taste to me. And I love it. So if I go to buy watermelon, or if I'm growing watermelon, you will always just find me growing yellow watermelon. And that's just a bias because I like how that tastes, right? So, and again, know your market demand, know what people demand. Don't just go and just plant a whole field of dasheen and it's going to stuck with you, and your whole family going to be eating dasheen from now until next year, because you plant the dasheen for you alone. You understand? You have to know what your demand is out there. And even if you get a dasheen sell, you're going to take it at whatever cents per pound or whatever, because it's not a demand, right? So let me just show you the microgreen, a short video, and everybody know what's microgreen. Another thing that we can get into production is mushroom production. I didn't include it here because I myself started, and I don't have the time sometimes to, I have liquid cultures and I need to set up my liquid cultures so they can spore, and then set up my bags with the spores so that I can get mushrooms. But as I don't have the time sometimes to get what I want done.
You're looking at a couple $1,000s every week. You can start this business with literally just seeds and a tray. From there, you scale up, you get into your local farmer's market, you escalate to different local high-end restaurants, get into some wholesale grocery deals, gyms, juice bars, anywhere there's a health conscious mindset. The side effect of doing this business is you're going to learn a lot about health and nutrition. You're going to become healthier, and you're going to become an advocate for changing the world in a positive way. That's exactly why I have to restart with 3 different TikTok profiles. Both of my other TikTok profiles are about 1 million followers. Every single time I get to that certain amount of number of teaching people how to become more self-sufficient and less dependent on the corporate power structure by growing their own food indoors all year round, I get throttled for it, I get banned, I get persecuted, and I get strikes on community guidelines. But I'm not giving up, folks, because this message needs to be thrown out in a good way. It needs to be broadcasted, because this is what your great-grandparents did to live, and this is why we were a healthy country in the 1950s and 60s, and why not everybody was obese. Because now we have chemicals and pesticides and glyphosate and atrazine, herbicides, food chemicals, and artificial dyes in our food, in our regulation agencies, the EPA, the USDA, and all of these other places. They allow acceptable amounts of poison in our food, and that same exact regulation in food practice is banned in other countries. This is the way out, folks. It's time to stop complaining and start sustaining. Start growing your own food indoors all year round. Look, this isn't difficult. This is a simple rack system that's available at growingfruition.com. I will have a link in my bio as soon as you guys give me 1,000 bucks.
So right, microgrid is something that you can grow. You just need a room. You don't need to even have an outdoor. You can use your porch. You can use any other places. Once you have an area, you can start small and you can grow your own microgrid. You can grow for yourself, or you can supply to your community, or you can supply to the supermarket. This is something I buy from the supermarket every week, and I do love microgreens. I've started a journey where I'm actually changing my diet, because I can tell you this, one of the things about food security is access. Yes, we have access to a lot of food, but a lot of crap. You understand? I'm always somebody who's always on the go. So I grab and buy whatever is there. This week, I was very disciplined to basically start doing meal prep. So I would have food available for the week, so I don't have to go out there and grab what is nonsense, because what is convenient is not always time healthy for us. So we have to start a whole different mindset. Because if you look at a lot of the communicable diseases around, knock on wood, I'm happy that I do not have anything like diabetes or high blood pressure. But I mean, there's a lot of younger folks than me who have high blood pressure, who have diabetes, because of what we have access to. So we have to start the paradigm shift now in terms of what we grow in, what we eat, because we also, as I tell most of my class or session that I do, whatever you grow, please make it convenient, because convenience is what sells. Folks do not want to come home from work to go and peel green banana or peel ground provision. I mean, gone are the days when we had marketing board and we used to have them vacuum seal. We that privilege here in St. Vincent to go into the supermarket and find things vacuum sealed that can be convenient, healthy things that we can go home and cook. But something like microgreens, and there's a package with lettuce, I can create a nice salad, right, that is healthy, and just add maybe 2 pieces of meat or whatever fish in it, right? So we have to think about convenience, because convenience is basically what sells. So as I say, research, research, research. You cannot be growing things in a vacuum or just run and say, I'm a farmer. Yes, but who buying from you? And what exactly you're growing? Do people actually want it? You have to think along that line, because you're going to become frustrated. Oh, I grew all these things last month and nothing. No, because you grow them for yourself. You didn't do any sort of market research. Nobody wants them, so you have to eat them. So you have to think along that line, right? And even if you end up along that line in terms of growing stuff that people don't want, when we get down to crop planning, God, let me see how much time we have left. Oh, when we get down to crop planning, I will tell you what the procedures to take. So let me move on. Right? So in wrapping up this section, the key to sustainable agriculture technologies is precision agriculture. So we have to think about things like sensors, as I talk about the drip irrigation system with the sensors, or not the emitters, those sensors to tell you when to turn on and off water. We have to think drone technology. I'm not pushing you into that area now, but drone technology would actually help you to identify certain pests and diseases, right? You have to think about drip irrigation system, because you have to conserve water, biopesticide and biofertilizers. You cannot be using all these chemical-based fertilizer. You have to think about natural alternatives. And I would give you examples, I said later on down. Renewable energy, there's a lot of pumps that now work with solar. You have to think about things like wind energy and bioenergy. I mean, we have to think about biogas digesters, where you can actually, if you have a pig pen, you have a chicken pen, these things can produce energy for your farm in terms of turning them into fuel for your farm, right? No-till farming, something that we would stress more on when we talk about soil health, right? Vertical farming, I show you a lot of options for vertical farming above, where you use less land and water in a controlled environment. Integrated pest management, we'll talk about later on, and genetic engineering, develop climate-resistant plants, pest-resistant plants, and those sort of things. But we know when we get to genetic engineering, a lot of people have their no and yes about it. I personally, when I'm planting, I buy open pollinated varieties. Reason why I buy open pollinated varieties, if I, like, for example, I have a variety of okra down school, it's red, and I just save seed and keep planting. We need to think about saving seed, because you have to think about sustainability, because if we keep buying those seeds that are hybrid and what's not, so you have to do your research again when you're buying seeds, because you can buy good varieties of seeds that are open pollinated, so you can save back seeds to plant again. But when you buy certain hybrids, it ends there, because sometimes when you replant the seeds, they do not grow. They may grow and they may not flower. You may not get back to, they're not true to type. You may not get back the original what you had before. So as I said, a lot of research is needed. Take your time, go about planning. Planning is very, very important, right? So I was going to give a 5 minutes break, but I will continue in the interest of time, because we took a bit over 5 minutes when we stopped for the questions, right? So crop production plan. And I think I sent some information as it relates to crop production plan, and I'm going to go through them bit by bit. So planning is very important, right? So when you decide, after you know all, you heard about up there, you heard about hydroponic system, aquaponic system, and so on. So now you have to start your planning, because planning is very important. So you sit in a session, you hear about all the options, you start thinking, if I have money, if I'm going to go this way, or I'm going to go do a grow box, start small, think big, sell until I get to where I need to get. Right? So you have to think along that line. So now you have to create a crop production plan. And oftentimes people do not create a crop production plan. So the first thing that you're going to focus on is your location, right? Your location is very important. And for location, you're going to know based on what you're going to plant. You're going to know if it needs full sun, if it needs a shaded area. You have to know about your soil type. And when we get to soil health, I will tell you how to determine what soil type you have and what soil texture you have, right? You will have to know about the size of your land. Your size of your land can help to determine what sort of product that you produce that you decide to grow, right? The topography of your land. If you have sloping land, it's ideal to put in things like pineapple, because pineapple is one of the things that helps to prevent soil erosion. So you put in pineapple on the sloping land. You can put in things like coconut trees. So you have to determine what you have and how to utilize it to the best of your ability. Because you might have a piece of land that you say, that's a waste of time, that's sloping, I can't get in from that. But then you can get something from it. You have to be careful and know what you put in. So research, ask questions, talk to old farmers, research is very important, right? You have to know about your water availability, right? In terms of how do I get access to water here, right? Is it going to be from the river? Am I going to be involved in water harvesting? Or am I going to, where am I going to get water, right? And what is the quality of the water? Then you have to think about the air flow. So if you're going to put in a structure such as a greenhouse, you have to think about what might be around to impede the flow of proper ventilation, because ventilation is very important, especially when you're going to install a tropical greenhouse, because the last thing you want to do is the heat to trap there and the heat cannot move. So you have to think ventilation. And last, proper drainage. Proper drainage is very important, because we're not growing rice in St. Vincent, so if we don't have proper drainage, we would have problems. So whether it is that you have to erect raised bed so that the water would actually remove from the soil, you have to think along these lines. So we have location. Next thing that we grow on to is the crop type. So whether you're going to plant vegetables, herbs, or root crop, you need to know what variety. Because as I mentioned before, you don't want to plant Roma and there's a demand out there for Caribbean or a demand for beef master or beefsteak, or a demand for heat master. And you plant a whole set of Roma because somebody give you them, the seedlings free, and you get excited, you plant down all the Roma and nobody wants them. Right? So research, know what is on demand out there, especially if it's Christmas time. If you're planting for Christmas time, I mean, why would you plant Roma variety for Christmas time? Yes, it's a hardy, it will spend longer time in your fridge, but if you're going to do a rose for your table or for your salad, or you're going to create a nice salad, you don't want Roma tomato. So you have to know your varieties and what people demand and why, right? Secondly, if you're following the list that Latoya sent to everybody, open pollinated variety. As I mentioned before, I rather use open pollinated variety over hybrid varieties, right? Certain things I would choose hybrid varieties in if I know I always have to go back to the store to buy seeds. So my corn, certain types of sweet corn, I like them because they're nice, they're sweet. Some I don't like because they're very sweet, so especially if you're going to do something like a, excuse me, if you're going to do something like a corn soup, or you're going to put the corn within your callaloo soup, you don't want it to be extremely sweet, but also you don't want it to taste like field corn to be hard and dry. You understand? So you have to be very cognizant of the type of variety that you choose, right? Is it suited to the tropical environment? We know we love Budo, we love things from America, but are they suited for our tropical environment? So you get a whole set of seed. You get about 20 packs of seeds, 60 packs of seeds, but you're going to become frustrated because when you plant these seeds, they either do not germinate and then they start thinking, oh, is it soil? Or they germinate and then they die. Is it soil? No, it's the seed. You need to buy seeds that are grown can be grown in the tropics. Because no matter if you have a friend in America, a friend in England or whatever, and they send you a whole set of seeds and it's not ideal for your environment, you're going to become frustrated, and then you're going to have all these seeds on your hand that nobody wants, and people are going to look at that seed and go, I don't want that again, and those are the things. So you have to know, research again is very important. It's not all about, all free things are not good, right? Then you plant, you have to think about the maturity index. Maturity index, so you know, oh, okay, I plant tomato, this is when I'm going to harvest, right? So I will have sweet peppers, I will have tomato for this time. You just can't plant and say, well, let me see when it will come in here. It might come next week. Oh Lord, nothing come. Me not plant this back again. No, you must research because different variety have different maturity index. It's not a one size fits all. You must keep record. So record is very important. So if you plant this variety before, you can go back and say, yeah, this variety was ideal. I could plant this. I'll get tomatoes for Christmas. I'll get tomatoes for Easter. I'll get tomatoes for Carnival. I'll get tomatoes for whatever event or whatever you will need tomatoes for, not by guess, right? Then you have to think about pest and disease. So research what pest and disease would actually affect this crop. And I'm looking over here because I have a book on pest and disease of different crops, and I thought I had it out here on my bookshelf, right? So research on the different types of pest and disease that affect this crop in the tropics. The last thing you want is to think about a pest and disease that affect the crop in the temperate. So you went online, you pull up information, and then you start sharing with everybody. Wrong information, wrong information. So ensure whatever you research it must be related to tropical crop, right? So know about the pests and disease that affect this crop and be able to monitor. The reason why you want to monitor so that you know beforehand, yes. So you know when you plant a thing like your cucurbits, and when you talk cucurbits, you're talking cucumber, you're talking watermelon, you're talking butternut squash, downy mildew. As soon as you start to see those white things on the leaf, problems, you know, yeah, time for my baking soda treatment, because once this spread, it's problems, right? And you don't want that. So you start with the baking soda, you put a sticker in it so you can stick on. You can go to the agriculture input warehouse, you can find what sticker they have, right, available, and you buy the sticker and you add it in so you could stick to the plant. Or you get some neem oil, And if you're going to use oil, you have to remember oil and water don't mix. So in order for it to mix, that is where you add your dishwashing liquid so that it can actually mix, right? So if you're going to use neem oil, make sure you add in some dishwashing liquid, and careful of the dishwashing liquid that you use. You can't use them that having oxy and all these fancy things. I personally like to use it Dawn with the yellow duck on it because it's nice, it's mild, and it's good, right? That's my go-to for everything, right? Then you have to think about weed control. So if you're planting peppers or you're planting tomato, you're going to say, I walk in. Do I have time to weed? Should I invest in some ground cover? What type of ground cover should I buy? Should I buy the plastic one? Should I buy the fabric one? All these considerations you have to think because you're planning. You're still in planning mode. You ain't jumping out there and just planting and then should I buy some ground? No, you're still in planning mode. And whilst you're planning, you're putting down, this is the size of the area, this is how much ground cover I will need. I can't afford for that. Let me do one bed at a time, right? Then you have to think about the combination of crop. You can't think about just throwing in a crop and then throwing another one, and then you realize, oh, this dying off now. Oh, you know why it dying off? This and this is not compatible. You should have known that before you went ahead and just stick in this. So you go by your friend, they give you this, you bring it home and stick it. That's the last thing you should do. Bring something from some friend and then stick it in, because you have to think about quarantining that plant first before you put it out into your field, especially if you have a nice growing field. You don't know what pests and disease they have, and we have that problem that keep occurring over and over. So you're sticking everything here, and then you create a carnival, and then you have chaos. Then you wake me up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Mishka, I have this problem. Yeah, because you have a whole carnival going on. There is no sort of order. There's no sense of order. What is that one over there? This one? Okay. We should have a plan. We should have a layout, right? So you think about your crop combination, and then the next point, you think about crop husbandry practices. When you talk about crop husbandry practices, what will I have to do from the day I plant this until the day I'm ready to harvest? So you might have to weed it. You might have to prune it. Oh, yes, I have to prune the tomato now, but I don't feel to do it today. I'm going to do it next week, but then it's overgrown, right? And then you have all these side shoots, and then you tell me, I could trellis this part too. Please don't message me. I beg you, do not message me with these nonsense, because you know that you need to start your pruning at a certain stage. Don't message me 10 o'clock and any hour day, especially when I'm in the class with my students who ask me, I could trellis this part up here too. No, don't message me. I will block and I will delete you. I honestly will block and delete you, because you have to pay attention and keep on track. Don't let things fall apart and then say, I was to do it last week, but I had church and I had to go party and I had to. No. Schedule your crop for a certain time, especially we're going to look at it as a business, right? So your crop husbandry practice, whether it's going to be weeding, trellising, pruning, whatever the case may be. You must know from planting to harvesting, I have all these I must do. Don't let the weed overgrown and come and tell me, well, the weed is overgrown and like it has some pests. Yes, the pest, right. The pest was happy. It went, it saw a place neglected and it lived. Allow it, please let it live. Do not destroy it because you did not want it, right? And then, as you know, your crop husbandry practices and you take them. So after you know about your crop type and all that you have to do, you're going to move on next to planting. So when you're going to do planting, now you have to know what method of land preparation did I choose? Am I going to do raised bed? Am I going to rent a tiller? Am I going to get ministry to come in and till it? Or am I just going to do no-till farming? You have to know what you want to do based on what you're going to grow. So if you're going to grow some corn, some no-till farming will be fine. You don't need to dig up a whole area, soften up the area. No-till farming will be fine. Once you're growing a crop above ground, no-till would be fine. You get one of those, I'll bring them tomorrow. Agas, you dig the hole, they are different size. There's big one for dashing that the ministry and OSU has been advertising, but there's smaller one if you want to plant a smaller hole. So they have many different sizes. Attach it to your drill and you dig your hole and you plant your stuff. As I say, investment is, you could borrow a drill from somebody, but your investment into your crop production is very, very important. So under planting, your land preparation method, right? Whether you're going to plow it, you're going to dig bed. And if you're going to dig bed, you see these shadowed beds, don't call me and tell me the crop flood. Yes, the crop right to flood, because you see these little shadow beds, you have to build a raised bed, right? So the drain alone must be a foot deep so that, and then the soil from the going up on the bed. So it's going to be raised. It's going to be a raised bed. It's a raised bed for a reason. Then you come in and you show me these bed flat and then you're watching me and telling me, well, I don't know what's going on. I wondering to myself, what is going on with you? Because it's a raised bed, but you're coming with this flat bed because it out of, you know, impatientness and what's not, right? So a raised bed, you have to put in drain. So if you're going to do region forest system, you have to know how to do a region forest system. Young people these days have no clue how to do region forest system, and that is the system you do when you're going to plant sweet potatoes. So I go and I see people plant, well, I didn't want to get into that, right? So now we're moving on. Then you have to know if you're going to add organic matter to that area, right? If you're going to add organic matter, you get your sheep dung, your goat dung, your rabbit dung, you add it in, you till it into the soil, right? Then you would have to determine, you could check for the pH of the soil. But in St. Vincent, you don't really need to worry because we know from the recent soil test, we have a neutral pH. It's good. It's good. Do not add any more lime to your soil. I don't understand why is it when you get limestone from ministry, you just go and just broadcast it. One time I going out to the countryside and I say like, hey, we having snow. No, the farmer got some limestone and he just broadcast it and they're not knowing the reason for broadcasting lime and all these sort of things. And they just do whatever because they get it free, right? Research is very important. I tell my students, if you see you're living in a community and somebody need help, reach out, help them, give them some guide, right? Then go back to your layout. Your layout is important. Whether you're going to plant straight, double row, you're going to plant in a triangle. It's up to you because you have to know if you're going to weed, if you're not going to weed, if you're putting on ground cover, because when you cut that hole, that is how it's going to be forever. So you have to take into consideration your spacing and your layout, right? Then we have this mentality of all in, all out. All in, all out would not be sustainable. You have to have staggered productions. If you're planting sweet potato, put in some this week. The next 3 weeks, you put in some. The next 3 weeks, you put in some. So you could always, if you're providing sweet potato to someone or a hotel, you must always have these potatoes, dasheen, eggplant, whatever it is. So staggered production is very important. It's not all in, all out. Even if it's a small area in the backyard, you buy your seedlings at different stage, or you set your seedlings at different stage so you can have staggered production. So you can, so you come hot 1 month. Hey, you can see tomato I get. Christmas reach, I don't have any tomato. I don't have tomato because you plant all and harvest all the same time. And then it's outside, so they know about pruning and taking care of the plants. So it can be around for a long period of time. So all these things are very important. Maximize space. You see them old time spacing that all of us find on land online that say plant pineapple and plant watermelon 6 feet apart. Plant it because the watermelon must be dead. So plant it 6 feet apart and you will have your 2 little grain of watermelon. You can plant these things closer. You know, you'll have to weed and take care and prune. So on the side shoots, you prune them off. You're looking for nice watermelon. So it requires care. Same thing with your tomato, you remove all these side shoots, right? The next thing that you're going to think about is crop compatibility, right? You don't want to put in beans and then put in something that is not compatible with. So you can go online, you can type in crops that are compatible. So you would see dill and cucumber, you would see the Tree Sisters, you would see marigold, you can intercrop it with, you could see where you can intercrop things like garlic with certain crops. And it will also tell you what crops will not be ideal with certain crops because they will repel one another. You will have struggle, you will have problems with yield and those sort of things. So after you finish location, crop type, planting, we go to fertilization or irrigation, anyone, but fertilization. But you could go to irrigation because obviously you will have to set up irrigation system first. So if you're going to set up an irrigation system, you must know your soil type. So if you know your soil type, you will know how often I will have to turn on this irrigation system, what type of emitter to choose, right? So soil type is important. Secondly, your climate. It's hot in here, it's always hot here. What time of the day does hot? Yeah, people had this old time story that, oh, you don't want to plant midday. No, you don't want to plant midday. What you're wetting is the soil. You're adding some moisture to the soil. Because let me ask you something. If you hot and it plays real hot, So you wait until 6 o'clock to drink water. I want you to do that. So because they say you don't wet your plant midday, I never tell you to go out in the field and dump water on your plant, but you try to saturate the soil where the plant is, so that it would not go into this shock and all this sort of thing. You have to have ways and means to keep the soil moist so that you would not have to go, the soil is dried out, the plant is heading into wilt, and then you have to go and wet it so it can jump back. Yes, that is a shock and that could be problems, right? But at the same time, you're not going to leave that plant there and say, people say, don't wet your plant midday. No, don't wet it. And if you thirsty and it's midday, please, you don't drink no water till 6 o'clock. And see if that makes sense for you and understand that the plant is a living organism as well, right? So next thing, your water holding capacity. And I will show you how to test the water holding capacity of your soil using a shovel, digging out an area, add some water, fill it, and then let it go down, add in a ruler, fill it again, and let it go down slowly. Then you multiply that by 4 and it will tell you how much water is lost in that given soil within an hour, so you will know your water holding capacity of that soil, right? The application of the correct amount of water is very important, and also water quality, because if you know the water coming from some dirty stream next door, please don't let it go on the plant, let it go to the roots of the plant. So the next thing, fertilization, right? The type of fertilizer, whether you're going to use organic fertilizer or inorganic fertilizer. I often say, people tell me, oh, I buy fertilizer. So what is the ratio? What grade? What fertilizer you buy? No, I just go and tell them I want fertilizer. So you growing tomato and you went and buy urea. You had to be growing callaloo, because urea is for leaf growth. So what about the phosphorus for the root? What about the potassium for flower, flowering and fruiting? And then you're coming to me. I remember one time I was driving to the countryside and I love sweet potato. If anybody know me, I love sweet potato. And any products that come with sweet potato, I love it. So I see some people harvesting sweet potato. So I said, let me get some, let me go and buy some from them. So I went to the guy and I said, can I get some sweet potato to buy, please? And he was like, miss, no sweet potato in there now. And the tree look nice. If you see green sweet potato vine pretty big, looking nice. So what happened? People teeth them out. He pull up a root. You could see a little stringy thing them. I said, oh, you use urea, free thing. So he's like, what do you mean by I use urea? I said, the white fertilizer, because you don't read what is on the bag. So your fertilizer was white? He said, yes. I said, that's urea. That is 4600. That's nitrogen, right? He said, what are you talking about? I said, if you go on the bag, outside you will see the fertilizer grade, 4600. So it only gives nutrients for growing of the leaf. I said, I ain't nothing, man. Your whole family have callaloo to eat. And well, obviously I was being miserable, so he cussed me. So I just jump back in my vehicle and drive off. So then when I pass him, I could tell him, what you need to do is look at the fertilizer ratio. When you plant in a sweet potato, you could give it a starter, right? So a starter one, you will see high in phosphorus. So if you go and you use one of those, the ones that look like Miracle Grow, the salt-based one, you would see either 652 13, so the higher one, right? The phosphorus is for the roots, and then it coming into bearing. You can't wait until you think, oh, it's time to harvest next week. Let me give it some blue corn. No, fertilizer application timing is very, very important. You have to know when to apply and what to apply. As again, it go back to resource. It's not by walking into the garden shop and say, give me a sack of fertilizer, because everybody's still using banana fertilizer. Nobody's focused on vegetable production fertilizer. So they just use whatever is there and they just go and they just apply. You have to focus on the grade of the fertilizer so you can know you're adding the correct things to your farm. So after fertilizer, you have to think now, harvest time. So based on what you plant, you have to know the harvesting index. You have to know what method of harvesting you're supposed to do. So when you're harvesting, you must always wear gloves when you're harvesting things like tomato, and we'll cover that later on, tomato, eggplant, because your nails and things can basically nick it. Whether or not you have nails, you can nick it just by grabbing it. And you don't ever grab it from the plant. You use a secateur and you separate it, because when you keep pulling, you're damaging the tree itself. And afterwards, you come tell me, oh, the tree dry up. Okay, you was there stressing it out, it must dry up because you're there pulling. hold the fruit and you clip it from the plant when you're harvesting it. You put it in a harvesting crate, not an old bucket, not a crocus bag, a harvesting crate. And your first thing you think about doing is removing the field heat. So wash it to remove the field heat. Because when the heat is still in the crop, respiration rate increase. It now is detached from the parent plant and it starts disintegrating, deteriorating. So by the time it gets to my home or somebody else's home, the tomato soft, it ain't good for itself, it ain't even good for nothing. All it good to do is to make some kind of stew. So you have to take these things into consideration because we're talking sustainable, we're talking about having access to food, right? So you have to know your harvesting tools, have harvesting crate, the correct PPEs. One of the things that you people often make mistake about, they have a field of stuff to harvest and the workman ain't come today. And so they go down the road and meet a block, some guys on the block smoking and they say, come, help me. They come up in the, with whatever they be smoking, they jump into the field, they harvest, the weeks later, disease, you have tobacco mosaic virus, and you're asking, what wrong? It's now you go on the block and bring them from smoking the weed and smoking the cigarette and obviously tobacco. So you're having things like tobacco mosaic virus. They didn't have on PPEs, they don't know where the clothes was. All these things, you have to remember it's food that we have to eat, and you have to have a coverall, clean coverall. And oftentimes people don't like to wash the coverall, but a clean coverall, because food safety is a very important thing, right? Moving on, you have to talk about post-harvest techniques in terms of extending the shelf life of this crop from harvesting from farm to farm, right? Protect it from heat, removal of the field heat, as I mentioned before, protect it from any sort of physical damage, and ideal storage temperature, because you're talking sustainability. So it's not a riff-raff session. You must do proper things, right? So the next thing that you go after harvesting, you have to think about profit, right? So what you're gonna plant, you have to think profit. So whether you're gonna put in organic, you're gonna get involved in organic production. Bear with me, I know I gone over a bit. I'm wrapping up in a bit. Whether you're gonna get into organic production, whether you're going to get into specialty crop, these plants would demand a higher price for organic and access to things like niche crops. So you'll have access to niche market, right? If you have a large farm, you can do things, but you have to be very careful. And people don't want to invest in disposable PPEs or even PPEs that folks can come in to do. So you can have a little farm tour. You have to think of like ways and different means to make money. So you're talking agriculture, tourism here. Pick your own and you wait and you go. I mean, we don't have large farms like that here, but if you're thinking about certain things, especially when the tourists come in to make extra money, you can think about agritourism, right? So this is additional revenue stream beyond crop sale, and it also enhances your brand recognition. So after profit, you think value addition. So let's say you plant a whole set of tomato, but you didn't get all sale. You make tomato sauce for your home, you make tomato powder, or you make some sort of tomato products that can be sold in your community. So you have to think, if I don't get all sale, how to add value, how to extend the shelf life. You have to think along that, not dumping it, not saying, well, it ain't work out this time, let me just throw it away. No, you have to find ways. And so whether or not it's, you have a sweet potato or the nice one sell, but you have a lot of small one. You turn it into pudding mix and you sell it. You understand? You have to think about this as a business, right? You extend the shelf life, reducing post-harvest loss, you turn it into another product and those sort of things. So that is your crop production plan, from location right down to value addition. So that is something that you should carry out. That is something that you should do. You should actually have record keeping of what you do and when you do and why you should do it. So this is I give this to Latoya. I know she uploaded to everybody. So this is something that you can carry out. This is your crop production plan. All right. So I'm going to wrap up in about 5 minutes because I know I already went over, and I will continue the rest for next session. So you already know your crop production plan. You're going to out to buy seed. The last thing you want, seedlings. The last thing you want to do is go to the market or wherever you're buying seedlings and buy those that already start flowering. Those seedlings that already start flowering went through stressful condition. When a seedling is small and it starts flowering, it indicates I am stressed. I have to go into the means of survival. The means of survival is producing seed. So I produce flowers because after flowers, I will produce seed and I can continue growing. So those plants that you go to the market or wherever seedlings are sold, do not buy those plants. Those plants will take a long time before they actually catch themselves to start growing. And this when you're going to start losing money. That's when you're going to become frustrated. And then you're going to say, oh, this ain't good, the land ain't good, everything ain't good, except that you bought seedlings that wasn't ideal. So when you're selecting seedlings, ensure there's a proper shoot to root ratio. A lot of people who plant seedlings like to put a lot of nitrogen, so you have a long spindly plant, and then when you plant that into the field, the net break it out there. What I could do when you send me and tell me, oh, I planted out all the tomato last night, or I planted out all the sweet peppers and all the head break. Yes, because you bought those seeds. Oh, you got them free, you got them as a discount. Just go again, because you need to look at the shoot to root ratio, right? Uniform appearance, nice broad leaf, free from pest and disease, no sort of brown spot, no hole, no insect present. Take out one or the three. Don't let it tell you can't take out one. You're looking at the root. The root must be nice and white. If they're brown, leave them there with the brown root that don't already smelling, already have problems. You know, if the root have balls on it, leave it there. No, it start balling in the seedling tray because it's too old, right? So you want vigorous, healthy growing seedlings. So you must look at the seedlings that you're going to buy and buy properly healthy seed. When you're also buying seeds, do a ragdoll test. So you buy seeds and you buy them and you decide it's going to put them into the seedling tray. That could become frustrated. Or you buy corn seeds and you just plant them out in the field. That become frustrated when you do not have the germination that you want, and that could deter you. So you do a ragdoll test. You take 10 seeds, put it in a tissue, moist it, and let it germinate. If 2 out of that germinate, don't even bother to plant that seed, because you know the germination percentage is very poor. Once 8 and above germinate, plant it out. You have good germination percentage. The germination percentage between 80 and 85, plant it out. You are good to go. You might have 1 or 2 missing spots. You just fill it in. When I'm planting corn, I normally plant them out in seedling trays, then plant them in the field, because I don't want any sort of pests going to eat my plants, my seeds, or foul or anything, but and then I do not have the germination that I'm looking for, right? So all these things that you must take into consideration. When you're doing setting seeds, remember to label them. So you put the date, the variety, and the the date, the variety of the seed that you plant, right? And what type of plant properties, whether it's lettuce, it's tomato, whatever. Please don't send me no picture asking me, you could guess what is this? No, I cannot guess what it is. You should have keep record of what you plant, so you should know what you're growing, right? So I would leave the strategies for next session. We'll wrap up the strategies in next session, where we will talk about crop rotation, identifying integrated pest management, using things like sticky traps and things to ward off slugs and bats and birds and so on. And we'll talk about organic pesticides and so on, and we will wrap up. So I will stop here for today, because I went over by 11 minutes. So we can take some questions now and we can wrap up, and I will continue on Thursday.
Right. Thank you very much, Ms. Edwards. I know we are fully saturated and still looking for more. In the interest of time, we'll take 3 questions. I'll take one from the chat first, and then we'll have 2 persons. One, the first question from the chat: can you recommend where we can obtain Caribbean viable non-hybrid seeds, please?
Repeat. Can you
recommend where we can obtain Caribbean viable non-hybrid seeds, please?
Right. You can get some at the agriculture input warehouse. I know when I purchase my seeds online, I would look for open pollinated varieties. I would also look for the zones. if you go to OSV, I think they have a few open pollinated varieties, but it go to research. So you go online, you research open pollinated varieties for tomatoes. So you have things like it's beefsteak that is open pollinated, and a couple of others that are open pollinated. So it's all about research. What I can do is create a list of varieties that are open pollinated so that you can actually have this information and the brand so that you can know when you're going to purchase.
I thank you very much. Now we have one hand up. Nicole, we'll take a question from you.
Okay, just I want to know, how do you prepare the baking soda for the plant if you have like the white stuff? And because I have some bell pepper, and this morning I realized that they have like, and if it's white fly, we call them on the leaf. I don't know.
If it's white fly, you're not using the baking soda for that. You are using the baking soda for fungus, right? So anything fungal, you use the baking soda. For white fly, you can use things like the dishwashing liquid. You can use the neem oil. Those are two things that you can use for the white fly.
So how do you prepare? What is the ratio? How much?
1 teaspoon to a gallon of water for the dishwashing liquid. When you're using a neem, it's 1 teaspoon of neem to 2 gallons of water and a teaspoon of dishwashing liquid in that also, so it can actually become emulsified, so it can spray.
So when you have like on the leaf, I saw that it is white. It's not, it just have some white spot. I don't know if that is a fungal.
Under the leaf. So what you're gonna do, so what you're gonna do, raise them up and touch it slightly. If they fly off, then you know it's white fly. If they don't move and they're looking like some sort of something drop on the leaf and it's just staying there, it's actually a fungus. So you have to be able to identify before you make, and then let's hope it's not mealybug as well. So you have to look at it. So if it doesn't move and it's still there and it's fuzzy, it can be mealybug.
And I had like some chamomile. I have a chamomile inside, but it already flowered, and then I checked. It was in some white inside at the roots, like inside the soil.
So you got a fungus in the root. So if you have a fungus in the root, right? What is your water holding capacity? Does it become waterlogged at time? Is the soil properly aerated? Because if it's not properly aerated, then that fungus could be from water logging.
I believe that's what.
And then sometimes a lot of people overwater the plants and end up having water logging. So you have that fungus occurring in the roots and end up rotting.
So maybe that's what we did, because so I lost a chamomile. I have to start all over again.
Yes, so thank you very much for that. We'll have the final question from Anne-Marie.
Okay. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay. I was just going back to that same caller there that just asked the question. I have a lot of that, and it's especially under the kale.
Right.
But
what
happened
under the kale?
Yes, what happened is when you use anything on it, all those things go in the ground.
Yes. So what I also use on my kale, I also use neem, right? So I spray it with neem, and I also use the dishwashing liquid. There's other things that we can use. I would show you in those presentation tomorrow, well, next week. You can even use things like a pepper spray, where you crush the hot pepper and put it in water and you spray it on the white fly to actually get rid of the white fly. But before even all of that, one of the things that you can put in is sticky traps, because once you have sticky traps, because white fly is attracted to blue. So if you have anything blue and you rub some cooking oil on it, or you rub some Vaseline on it and you put it out into the field, something plastic, the white fly is attracted to it, so it would leave the plant and go there. So you would reduce the pesticide pest load that would be found on those things like kale and those other things. So in my next session, I want to express about using sticky traps, because when you use sticky traps, it helps to reduce most of these problems in terms of pests, but not the fungus.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
I
welcome.
now know what
Very
I now
much
know what
again.
to do.
All right.
Yeah.
And trust me, you're gonna learn a lot more from Miss Edwards. As you can see, she was in her element tonight, and you literally got a taste, even though we are so saturated. So, Miss Edwards, we want to thank you so much. We look forward to the very next session, so I won't make the thank you long tonight. I'll
All right.
save that for your final session for this topic. So with that, ladies, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for being so interactive. We truly enjoy having you here. And please kindly remember the survey in the chat, the persons that expected to complete. Miss Edwards, thanks again. Looking forward to seeing you again next week.
All
With
right,
that,
everybody.
I say good night, everyone.
Everybody have a
Bye.
good night. Bye.
Good night.
Very much.